back to our next episode of UX Podcast Change Starts With You. My name is Marley Tucker, and I have two guests with me today from Okaloosa County School District. I have Miss Catherine Card.
Hey, how are you?
Doing well, doing well. Thank you so much for coming.
Appreciate that. Happy to be here.
Catherine, do you want to just say a little bit about what you do at the district?
I am the Public Information Officer for the school district, so I really have the honor of highlighting all the great things that are happening, all the highlights of our schools and successes and accomplishments, and also helping about promote all the good things that are happening with our community engagement and partnerships.
So it makes sense why we brought her here today, doesn't it? And I also brought Miss Teri Schroeder, and she just said a few minutes ago that she likes to be behind the scenes. So we're pushing her out of her comfort zone today by bringing her here with us. But Teri, why don't you describe a little bit about what you do at the district?
Sure. My name is Teri Schroeder, and I am the Program Director for Student Services. One of the major functions in my position is the mental health coordinator for our district, and that's where we have partnered and really grown our partnership with the United Way and our other community partners to help us on behalf of our students that are struggling with their mental health issues. And we all know in a post-COVID era, mental health is a concern not only in our area, but it's a nationwide concern. So that is one of my biggest roles right now in the school district.
Definitely, definitely.
Amongst many others.
Of course, right? As many hats as we can fit on you.
At least I get to choose the hats.
That's good. That's good. Silver lining. In nonprofit world, we know what that's like as well. Constantly juggling as many hats as possible. But they're fun hats. They're creative hats.
And they're meaningful.
Yes, and they make a difference. Yes. So we'll stack them as high as we possibly can. But we have lots of programs and initiatives that we partner with Okaloosa County School District on. So many that it's actually hard to narrow it down and be able to cover them all in 15 minutes. So we're going to highlight a few of our favorites that we want to talk about today. When I talk about United Way Emerald Coast, and if you're a listener, you probably already know this, but we like to improve the quality of life for our neighbors living paycheck to paycheck by really bringing together the stakeholders in our community to create creative solutions to our most challenging problems. So when I think about those stakeholders, you think about city municipalities, you think about the school districts, especially, you think about local businesses, you think about nonprofits, and everyone who can really help those people who need it the most. And so some of the ways that we really started with the school district and helping our students and our kiddos and our families was with Stuff the Bus. Catherine, do you want to talk a little bit about what Stuff the Bus is and how it helps our kiddos?
I absolutely can. Being here locally and over the last couple summers when we kind of instituted this, we just did this big push with the school district, all of our schools, the United Way, and local businesses that would essentially gather as many school items as possible. I mean, everything ranging from pencils to notebooks to copy paper to markers, highlighters. These were all things that we know that we need to obviously use during the school year. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And we essentially have school buses that show up, and we've got schools and representatives and kids and cheerleaders out there that will essentially help get that community support of folks that are walking in the Walmart. Hey, can you contribute, donate? Because again, with over 30,000 children and the needs that are there, not everybody can afford school supplies. So this has been a great initiative between our district, the United Way, and multiple, area businesses, that will help generate school supplies for the summer in hopes that it can carry us through the school year. So I think that that's been a success. Yeah. And it's something that we look forward to doing every summer with you and helping our kids and, of course, our teachers. I mean, there's needs that teachers have. I mean, I know the big thing even being on PTO, one of the things is copy paper. Yeah. There's just so much. And I mean, you've got 30 kids and you've got 6 to 7 class periods a day. That adds up pretty quick.
Yeah, definitely. Before we renamed it Stuff the Bus, 2-3 years ago, it was Cram the Van. Mm-hmm. And really being our focus on aiding the district, like you said, making sure that we have not just the students, but also those teachers. Because like you said, when we get those lists and it's like copy paper and stuff like that, it's like, how can we support them? How can we make sure that they're not having to pull out of their pockets? We want to make sure that we can help them in every way possible.
And I have a daughter that's actually a teacher at one of our local schools, and I watch her every year spend her own money, and I watch her every year put her Amazon wish lists out there. And a lot of our teachers are doing that. And obviously you don't go into education for the money. And so anyway, we can support those teachers to also help support those children. It's a big deal.
Yeah.
It makes the teachers feel valued. It definitely benefits the children. And for a teacher that knows the community's behind them, that's huge. That's important. And it just gives them that lift that they need sometimes to just get through the rest of the week.
Yep. Because you're all human. You're going to have good days and you're going to have bad days. And, the teachers they're not just a teacher, they're the mentor, they're the parent, they're the doctor. They have so many roles, and whatever we can do as a community to help us. So what Teri said is that they know that the community is there to support them. That to me is like a complete blessing. So.
Definitely. Well, we appreciate your partnership in that initiative. And another one that I really wanted to talk about a little bit more recently was our initiatives around hunger with the students in the district. So United Way Emerald Coast, since COVID-19 has really stepped into the food insecurity scene for the first time. I remember during COVID, we were like, how do we do food distributions? How do we help students? How do we help our families that can't put food on the table, right? And so we're already working with the school district. How do we continue to support those students and those families in those Title I schools that really struggle with some of those support systems? So Catherine, do you want to talk a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. Hey, we do. We never want to see a child go hungry. And the reality is that we know we do have children that are food insecure. And we also have children that are homeless, and it's hard because we want to take care of everybody and have those resources in place, because the children that are food insecure, them going to school, that breakfast and lunch, and maybe that after school snack may be the only meal that they get.
Yeah.
And along with the United Way and along with some other nonprofit organizations have really stepped up with the snack packs, the backpack programs. So that way we can help supplement some of these things when the kids are away from school, they're at home over the weekend. We're able to, to bridge that gap of ensuring that they've got something that's healthy, that's going to sustain them. But it's something that we as a district want to take care of those families, and especially those that are food insecure, and ensuring that they have what they need. So we're grateful to these types of programs that are help making that possible.
Definitely. It's been something that we've been able to actually receive more grant support of over the past couple years, or really the last year or so. Funders and organizations really trying to team up to support our students. You talked about, that lunch could be the only meal that they're really guaranteed in a day. And we know that if you're hungry and you're thinking about the next time you're going to get food, you can't concentrate on what's being taught in front of you. And those poor teachers, are starting behind the starting line with some of those students. And so how do we get them up a little bit closer to the same starting line as some of those other children to make sure that they can go on to be successful in school as well? I know we've had some stories where we've seen clients who've taken that school lunch money and used it for other things, right? Because they thought that meal wasn't as important as some of those other things that needed to get done that day. And so trying to make sure we have all those basic needs met.
Sure.
As best that we can.
And I would also venture to say, and I know in the mental health world, there's not an office that I go into in any of our providers in our school that there's not a snack drawer, there's not a snack box. You can go into just about any teacher's classroom and open a drawer. Yeah. And there'll be a place where something for that hungry child or that kid who comes and says, I didn't get breakfast before I got here this morning, or something like that. So it's a real way of life for some of our children. And we're doing everything we can in partnership with our community partners to try to meet that need. Yeah, for those kids. And like you said, it's hard to learn how to read, write, and do math when you're thinking about the next thing to eat, or your tummy's growling.
Exactly. And you're in the classroom, and it's not just at the elementary level. I mean, it's at middle school, it's at the high school level. We've even got schools where they're not Title I, but we know the need is there, and it's all over the county. It's not just, specifically concentrated in one area. So, and again, it's that teacher role of, I'm making sure I'm taking care of, my students, and the guidance counselors and things great, and the mental health professionals at any time they have this open door policy. If you're hungry, this is where, and I think we also do it in a way where it's not where the children are not made to feel uncomfortable or singled out. And
it protects their, the word I'm thinking for it protects who they are.
Yeah.
They're not afraid to ask, but we want to do that in a way that just gives them that confidence that somebody cares about them.
Right.
Right.
And I think we also, from that education standpoint, that children that they're aware of their classmates. I mean, I can even speak from my own experience with my own daughter, because she was just like, can I have more food? I'm like, you really going to eat all that? And she said, well, and she told me when she was younger that, hey, there's a friend that they don't ever bring a lunch, and they just seem to be. So that was kind of like my aha moment that, this is reality for families. So I was like, yeah, absolutely. But I think growing up that we're teaching kids to care about others.
Yeah. And so important. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think more so with the COVID, because they said we're all in this together.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it's like you were trying to move from that, but it is still very much, part of the makeup, and things are getting better, but it's still,
families are still recovering.
Yeah. It's just taking longer than others, and we have to be kind of, I mean, I may personally feel okay, my family's okay, but I know that there's others that are not in that same position. So, and we just need to kind of keep that at the forefront.
Definitely. Teri, you mentioned mental health, and that's a perfect segue into our next section here. If you watch this podcast, I think every single time that I've been on here, I've talked about Women United because it's my favorite. So shocker, we're going to talk about it again.
I love Women United.
I love that you love Women United. So if you haven't listened or watched our podcast before, Women United is United Way Emerald-Coast female philanthropy group focused on the mental health of women and girls here in Okaloosa and Walton counties. And one of our first initiatives supported the school district was our Empower Teen Mental Health Conference. And so that's how I met Teri, got to really know her and her role and her counselors and her mental health support professionals in the district, and the amazing work that they're doing and the dedication that they have to our students really is, it's truly amazing. It really, really is. And so through that, we've been able to just get off the ground running with our impact with our students, because the need is there and it's existing, right? Teri, you mentioned just briefly a second ago that is something we struggle with a lot of our students. Is there anything else that you would add?
Well, I would say technology in and of itself is good for our world overall, but it hasn't done our children any favors. It has put a lot of pressure, especially on our teenagers. It's easy to say things behind a screen to each other.
Yeah.
Where in the past, if you were going to say something mean, you had to do it in the face-to-face. So especially for girls, their sense of person is wrapped up in a lot of social media, which we know is in most situations it's somebody's highlight reel.
Yeah.
We don't see the struggles behind that post, or we don't see the real life of somebody. And so our girls are struggling, which is where I think that Empower conference that you guys do every year. So you started last year and you're doing it again this year at Choctaw on May 4th. It's specifically for girls, and it'll address some of those issues that girls really struggle with. Self-image and self-harm and confidence and all of those things that we assume that they're okay with, but in a lot of ways they're not.
Yeah.
And we don't necessarily see it, but we do see it coming out in self-harm, and other types of behaviors.
Yeah.
That's not to say that our young men aren't struggling,
Right.
because they are. But for the sake of this conversation, that conference, that Empower conference, really deals with those girls' issues. And as a mother of 2 daughters, and I know you have 2 daughters as well, that's a big deal for us.
Yes.
And it's close to our heart. And so I thank the United Way for doing that. I thank you for the partnership in that area. We got into it a little ahead of the game this year, so I'm thankful for that. And I do know that quite a few of our team members are planning to come and be a part of that. And just to give a quick plug and a shout out to our team of mental health counselors, we have got some fantastic team members that are mental health counselors. Anywhere from, licensed mental health counselors, licensed clinical social workers, marriage and family therapists, school counselors. We just have a great team that really focuses on helping those kids get through the hard stuff.
Yeah.
You've probably heard the term trauma. Our kids have a lot of trauma. And just to have somebody to talk to and talk that through is a big deal. So I'm proud of our mental health program in Okaloosa County. I think that we have probably one of the most stellar programs in the state, if I'm going to brag on it myself.
Yeah, I think you should.
And the analogy that I used to use is, the whole mental health program came out of the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas situation back down in Park London. If I could say that there was a silver lining in that awful, awful experience that they went through down there, is that the focus on mental health in our state through our legislators and all of that just really came to the forefront. And that's a big deal.
Yeah.
That is a huge deal. And so that is something that is really, really positive that came out of that. We in Okaloosa County used that funding to actually hire our own staff. And that is also a benefit because we created our own program. And I tell everybody that analogy is that we were building the plane as we flew it back then. Back in 2018, when it all came out, we were doing bits and pieces. We started out with 12 people. We're up to 32 of our own people now.
Awesome. Yeah.
Good and bad.
Yeah.
Good because we've got the resources to do that. Not so good because we need it.
Right.
And then we also have a great partnership with CDAC, who comes in and does some prevention education in our Title I schools with our elementary kids. So again, I feel like, we're growing and we're doing great work with kids and addressing those mental health concerns, teaching those social skills to the little ones so that when they get older, they know how to handle themselves. They know how to resolve conflict in a way that's appropriate. They know how to be resilient. So it's a great program. I will say, as a way of thanking the Women United, is the crisis kits that organization put together for us. Marley came to me a couple years ago and says, "What do you need? What does your program need?" And at that point, we had just dealt with a crisis at one of our schools. And in reflecting on that, I thought, it took our mental health counselor into the late evening, the night before we were going to respond to the crisis that happened the evening before. And I thought, what we could really use is crisis kits. And what that looks like is it's just things that our counselors can use to go in and help children talk.
Yeah.
Coloring pages, pencils, crayons, markers, fidgets, things that they can put in their hands, the little balls that they can squeeze, because we know that if kids need to talk, they don't necessarily do it eye to eye. They do it, engaged in something, and that opens their mind up that they can share.
Right.
And so the Women United did 2 crisis kits for every level of age group. So we have 2 for elementary, we have 2 for middle school, and we have 2 for high school. And what that allows us to do is nobody schedules a crisis.
Yeah.
So we never know when they're going to happen. And generally, I find out the night before. We have to respond the morning of. And so we can grab that kit. We can get it where it needs to be. Our team has everything they need right there to respond. And it doesn't take somebody pulling stuff together at the last minute. And so that is huge. So my team can focus on the children and the crisis in front of them rather than having to gather supplies and things to utilize to help those children open up and talk. So that's been a huge, huge deal for us. We actually, sad to say that we used one recently because we had a death of a student in our county. And again, it just made that response a little easier for everyone involved. And so we thank you and thank Women United for that.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I think you said it perfectly. You know, when you think about limited resources, I always think about time as really being like our most limited resource, right? And so when you think about these counselors having to respond, I mean, what is the most important thing there? That's the time, right? How quickly can you do it, right? And what can you provide to those students to make sure that as fast as possible you can have those conversations, as fast as possible you can respond to those mental and emotional needs? How do you support them through this? Because the longer they sit in that without knowing how to deal with it, what does it turn into? What is that behavior? How does that behavior come out in unhealthy ways, right? Absolutely. And so, yeah.
And another beautiful piece to that is the cards. When those kits were put together, there were handwritten cards to each student that came in for counseling. And the counselor hands that card off to that student. They walk away not only having been counseled, but something that they can look back at later when they're struggling. Somebody cares about you.
Yeah.
And that was that. The smiles that brought was pretty sweet.
Yeah.
Oh.
And just having those opportunities where, and again, that outlet, when we have that opportunity for these girls to come together and they're seeing, okay, it's everyone, they may not look like me, but you know, they're going through the same things, or they have similar concerns, or there's similar struggles. And I think it's an opportunity for them to understand that it's not just, you know, me, I'm not alone in this. So and having those resources and people especially when they see me at school, that's somebody that I know that I can go to.
Right. We talked about the girls especially struggling, right? And I think about my childhood, right? And like, I was never going to a girl, I was never going to an adult woman and saying, this is what I'm struggling with, because I never had that safety, right? I never felt it. I never felt welcome to be able to have those conversations. So how do we build that so that they feel comfortable?
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, I mean, that's a small snapshot.
We didn't even talk about like reading pals.
We didn't.
One too.
Yeah. So go ahead, talk about reading pals, Catherine.
Reading pals, I love working with you guys on that and being able to push that for volunteers in the community that, especially the retirees and you know, grandmas and grandpas that maybe want to get out there and get with some of our children at some of our schools that offer this program. Yeah. Where at an early age, we're working with children that, you know, may struggle, and to help promote that love of reading, because test scores show, and just the academic side of it, that, you know, at an early age, they start reading, they're going to perform really, really well. So we want to have that as a driving force, and opportunities where children can get books. They have them at home, not only at school, and where they've got some one-on-one time with somebody that can work with them on, you know, how to pronounce, you know, certain words, and getting that practice to build on that reading skill. So that is something that is near and dear to my heart, that I really am thankful that, you know, we're able to do something like that, because children need to be able to know what, you know, a good book is all about. And
yeah, definitely. And I think too, for our volunteers, that's such a meaningful experience for them too. You know, sometimes when you're doing some of those other volunteer opportunities, you don't necessarily see the impact right in front of your eyes, right? You don't watch the change happen. You don't watch the difference that you're making. But with Reading Pals, you literally watch in front of your face the child's mood change. You watch, how they can read better, and you're able to really see that difference right in front of your eyes. So it's a very meaningful program for our students, but also for our volunteers. So how could we forget that? Thanks for catching me.
You're welcome.
And Teri's on the nervous one. It should have been me. So that's just a small snapshot of the programs that we work with Okaloosa County School District on. The focus areas here at United Way Emerald Coast: health, education, economic mobility, and essential needs. Every single one we're working with the school district on, supporting those students, supporting those families, supporting those teachers, and the the best way that we possibly can. We know there's more work to be done, but we're doing our best, and we need you guys to get that work done. So join us in our efforts in whatever way is meaningful to you. But thank you so much, Catherine. Thank you so much, Teri, for everything that you guys do, for your partnership, for your willingness to work together, and for the support that you provide to our community. It really, really makes a big, big difference.
Well, and I think in turn too, for the superintendent, Marcus Chambers, I think also the thank you to the community, because without them, we would be limited as to what we can do to support our families. And every day we feel that, and we feel like that we're making a difference. And that's a fantastic feeling.
So next time you put on another hat, just remember the kiddos and the teachers and the students and everybody that you're impacting as you put that hat on, right? So thank you so much for listening to today's episode of Change Starts With You. Thank you to our guests, and I hope to see you next time.